All right, welcome to the final yard here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on 5 Reasons Sports. We got Louis Sung. You can follow him at Louis D. Sung. You can also find him on Pulse of Fins Nation. We got Eric Wadicki. You can also find the Pulse of Fins Nation and our Prize Picks programming around the network. The Miami Dolphins put up one of their better fights of the season. Tua throws only 3 incompletions, one of which was a throwaway. Another one could have been caught. And they lose anyway. They lose on a 61-yard field goal, and the season is over. I don't think there's any way around this. There's less than a handful of teams that have come back from 2-6. Last year, the Packers did it at 2-5. It's not happening. It's not happening with this group. There were encouraging things in this game, but ultimately they're irrelevant. One encouraging thing, I guess, and we'll get again to the sponsors in a second, and then Lewis and Eric will come in here. Was that Waddle's season is not over because it looked like he popped his Achilles or something like that. Was right back on the field. Did have a big catch on a third down. Tua played, I thought, exceptionally well for the majority of the game. Improvised, did a whole bunch of different good things. The Dolphins defense could not get a stop. They couldn't get a stop, and when they finally got enough of a stop at the end, they got burned by a 61-yard field goal, and that's just what happens to bad teams. And that's just where I'm at. But again, we'll get into the details of where this is. We'll take your comments, all that kind of stuff. We do want to mention sponsoring this particular program, sponsoring the Final Yard the entire season. They also sponsor our 5 on the Floor postgame show on the Heat, the Real Estate Shoppe. That's Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach counties. They got a proven on-market strategy. They help sellers. The Real Estate Shoppe helps sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because of a deep understanding of the local market, and they do everything they can to ensure a smooth and enjoyable home buying and home selling journey. So check them out at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. That's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, or 954-268-9812. That's 954-268-9812, or realestateshoppefl.com. Louis, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. Part of me felt like that the trick was for me to not watch the game because the first half I was not able to see it because I was out having a late brunch with my lady. I'd been out pretty much all week dealing with flu symptoms. I finally come back and I end up watching this stuff. And I thought to myself, well, this is where things start to go sour. And I already see the comments starting. It's Cam Ward time. I'm like, did anybody, like, I don't even like what would you expect Cam Ward to do that Tua did not today? Aside from just run more. Like what is Cam Ward? What would Cam Ward have done in this game? The offense scored 27 points. The offense did everything they possibly could have in this game. Like what more could you have asked for from them today? They scored I understand what Eric is about to say because we already talked about it. There is zero margin for error. Everything has to be 100% perfect when you play against Buffalo because if you don't, you're going to lose if you are the Miami Dolphins. But when I have that kind of mindset, that tells me that there's never even any point. We might as well forfeit because to expect a game to be so perfect that you score a touchdown every single time you go down the field is beyond ridiculous against any football team. Even the worst football teams, you don't score a touchdown every single time. Even against the Broncos, when the Dolphins scored 70, they didn't score a touchdown every single time. So what we're asking now is for perfection beyond perfection. We're expecting a team I don't know what else can you expect from the offense. If there's anything, I'm putting this solely on the feet of the defense because all you needed was just one stop. The entire second half, one stop, and you couldn't even do that. And the one time, as we alluded to, the one time that we actually got there, listen, the guys at the 3 yards per carry show are kind of arguing back and forth with this. CK and Simon think that the penalty was clear. Alf thinks that the penalty was not because part of me was thinking to myself, okay, yes, the helmet to helmet, but what was Poyer supposed to do? He already had a full head of steam. He can't hit the brakes like that. What was he supposed to slide down and hit the turf? I guess that's the mindset that he has to do. So I'm looking at this from the perspective of who do I blame for this? It is the defense. to say that the offense had anything to do with this loss, and I already see the comments like, "Oh, I'm delusional. Tua's going to get hurt." Like, you can't play scared. Tua didn't play scared. By the way, Tua did exactly what you would have wanted one Cam Ward to do as well. And when the going got tough, he went down and he got the 4th down conversion himself. He did it himself. And we all held our collective breaths. I know. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because in that particular instant, that was the play they needed. And he went and he did it. And they scored the touchdown. I didn't think they were going to score. I thought that Tua was going to throw some interception. I thought somebody was going to fumble. But you know what? They proved me wrong. They did exactly what they needed to do. It was the defense.
The defense, Lewis, has, this has been an issue now that the defense has started to regress and they've lost pieces and all the rest of this. I'm not going to make excuses for them. This season was over when Greer didn't protect them at the backup quarterback position. That's it. Like we talked about the offseason, he needs to be fired. That's it. Like, that's where I'm at with it. I'm sorry, because they have no margin for error now, in large part in this season, because everything fell apart during those weeks, and they're not the same team now as they were. But Eric, I want to go to this. The 2-point conversion. Or the 2-point play at the end, I would have gone for 2. I said that before they didn't. I know it's a little bit of, people are going to say it's hindsight now. You didn't expect a 61-yard field goal. There were all kinds of things. There could have been a runoff with Hollins resetting the ball. There was a whole bunch of things that could have happened there. But to me, I don't trust the Dolphin defense right now. And I don't trust them against Josh Allen. They were not – it's like something was going to happen to not get a stop. McDaniel is so consistently aggressive. To me, I don't know. You go for 2 there. You get it, you win, or at least you're in better position there. And I know people are going to say they would have lost anyway. I get it, because they came down and kicked the field. I probably would have gone for 2 there anyway. But Eric, overall, though, like, again, the offense put up 27 in Buffalo. Good weather, bad weather, you take it.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, and I don't really know what it's worth at this point at 2-6 in the season, that was probably the best game Tua has ever played on the road in Buffalo. The one thing that you can say was a turning point in the game, if you're going to look for anything on the offensive side of the football, and it's not even really his fault, is Raheem Mostert getting the ball punched out from behind, because the Dolphins were driving into Buffalo territory at that point. They likely would have ended up with points on that drive as well. So I think that's the one blemish on the game offensively for me. They did almost everything that I wanted them to do. They ran the football effectively. Mike McDaniel stayed patient this entire game. He didn't go crazy with the over-aggression. This was the game where he kind of showed a little bit more maturity as a play caller, and kind of took what was given to him for the entirety of the game, and it worked for him, but it wasn't enough. The call at the end, unfortunately, maybe by the letter of the law, it's correct, but I don't think Poyer launched himself by any means, which I think that should count for something, as far as that play goes. But you can't afford yourself to be in that situation really in the first place with the defense. Had the clock run down a little bit more, I would have gone for 2. I think maybe with 1:40, that's not what you want to do, because then you're unnecessarily shooting yourself in the foot with time on the clock. I think once they kind of got down to the 5 with 1:40 left, it was kind of like, oh, well, we're here now.
Right.
And, they hadn't really accounted for that.
Well, we talk about the run game and sticking with the run. Look, the Mostert fumble obviously was a killer. There's always going to be a play. And I just keep coming back to this whole margin for error thing. This was supposed to be the year. See, I'm trying to look at the big picture of this. People are going to focus on the one game and a call here, a call there, decision here, decision there, fumble here, fumble there. But I come back to this. This was supposed to be the season where they passed the Bills. I mean, this was supposed to be the season. The Bills lost all these players on defense. They were coming into the year with injuries. Diggs isn't there anymore. This was supposed to be the season that they passed the Bills. And they basically lost their season in the game against the Bills at home. Okay, when Tua got hurt, but they were already well behind in that game. And so I come back to the macro, like the micro of this. Like, we all expected them to lose today, right? Like, they were 5.5 point under, 6.5 point underdogs. I took the Bills. Because I thought that was a low number. They were competitive. I give Tua credit. I think, again, what you see with him, and Lewis, I'll pivot back to you on this because I'm with you on this. I'm not saying that Cam Ward wouldn't be an improvement. I don't know. Okay, Cam Ward does things that I haven't seen many quarterbacks do at that level. But I just think what we've seen is when Tua's been in there, in the past couple of games, they've looked different. They've looked better. They've looked like a competent football team.
They look like
times.
the offense they're supposed to, Ethan. That's where it boils
Correct.
down to. That
Correct.
Because now, if the discussion you want to have is whether or not Miami needs to be better prepared at the backup quarterback position, obviously, yes, every team, theoretically speaking, should be better protected at the backup position. If Miami decides that they want to invest in Cam Ward and make him the backup quarterback for Tua for a few years and let him have the Aaron Rodgers treatment,
that's not happening, Lewis. Though you know that. Come on, you get Cam Ward, he's starting, right?
No, wrong, incorrect, wrong. And the reason why is because whether you like Tua or you don't like Tua, it's not about whether or not Cam Ward is better than Tua. We know how the offense functions with Tua. You know how the Green Bay Packers have managed to find a way to have 30 years of good elite level quarterback play, and it looks like they're on their way to potentially having 45 years in a row. It's because they draft their quarterbacks 4 or 5 years before it's time for them to even play. They learn how to play the NFL before they even have to sniff the football field. They let these kids with all this raw potential talent, they put them in the pressure cooker and they just let them cook. And when it's finally time to take off that little lid and finally let the finished product come to light because the original product has run its course, then it looks like a thing of beauty because they didn't rush the issue. We have all these young quarterbacks who come into this league. Like we're looking at we remember CJ Stroud with the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud was supposed to be the next greatest quarterback who ever played the game of football. Right now, the Texans don't look so good. And it's not necessarily because of Stroud, but Stroud has not exactly been the unbeatable, the invincible, the undeniable force of nature that he was in his rookie season. Why? Because on multiple of different factors, perhaps. But either way, they rushed the issue. Miami right now, the way that this offense functions, because people are talking about we need to sell this roster right now. We need to trade Tyreek. We need to trade Waddle. We need to trade all of the good players that are on this team, fire Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel at the end of the season, and start all over again. Why? The 1 year, like we've had 1 year where things have not gone the way that we're wanting it to during the middle of the season. We may not make the playoffs this year, and we were supposed to. I understand what the expectations were. I get it. I'm frustrated by it as well. We were supposed to be a playoff team. Things don't always go the way that we want it to. Does that mean that McDaniel deserves to be fired? No. Does that mean that Tua needs to be replaced? No. I don't think that does anything for you other than set you back 3 years. We have the core. The offense works when Tua is on the field. You focus on making sure that he stays healthy. Work on him. Make sure that he's ready to go. If you need a better insurance policy, go get yourself a better insurance policy. That I don't have an issue with. But to say that it's time to trash this offense, that this thing has been a failure from the top to the bottom, I don't believe that. A failure from the top to the bottom means that for the past 3 years, Miami has fallen short of the playoffs. They go 8-9 or whatever. They go 9-8. They can't get the job done. That nothing has worked. That's obviously not true. It is obviously not true that nothing has worked. This year, it feels like we're just cursed. You mean we lose on a 61-yard field goal from Tyler Bass after he dinked and doinked kicks all game long, and now this time, the first time, he actually ends up going crazy. Like we're talking, like I see Jay Seymour in the chat talking about we've been this since the year 2000. We're tired of being mid. That was the year that Marino left. If you're looking for the next coming of Dan Marino, I got news for you guys. You ready for this? You're going to hate me for it. Cam Ward ain't it either. You know why he's not going to be it? I don't know why yet, but he's not going to be Dan Marino. He's just not.
I get it. But I think we got to look at the macro of this, Lewis. Like I'm just saying, like we're going to sit here and talk. Look, the quarterback.
But what is the macro?
The quarterback had 3. The macro is okay. Chris Greer was given. Okay, this is a results business. It's a results business. Like and you are what your record says you are.
Okay, results. For the past 2 seasons, they've made the playoffs without Tua.
They still haven't won a damn playoff game. Eric, look, like they are. He was given everything he needed. tons of draft picks off the Tunsil trade, everything else, total rebuild from the ground up. The team is 2-6. Like, I'm not going to say, well, because Tua got hurt. Again, he didn't have a competent backup quarterback.
Okay, fine.
So that's on him. Eric, go ahead.
No, well, there's also something to be said about the fact that, listen, yes, they made the playoffs the last 2 years. But I think there's also something to be said about, well, when you look at last year, how they faded down the stretch and then came into this year 2-6, you're looking at almost at this point, well over almost a full season's worth of games of a sample size where we can see, hey, wait a second, there's something wrong here. And I don't care about injuries along the offensive line because the same offensive line that we're praising right now is almost the same as it was down the stretch last year. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, and I'm not saying that it means necessarily that you need to get out of, I don't know who you need to get out of, but I do think that there are significant changes that need to be made here. Because
are you firing Mike McDaniel regardless of what happens?
No, but to Eric's point, though, this team has now lost. They lost their last 3 games of last season, and now they've lost 6 of their first 8 games of this season. This team has lost 9 out of their last 11 games. Fire Greer. I'm done. I'm sorry. Like, he was given the keys to the kingdom. Roth
okay, fine. Are you firing McDaniel too?
I think what has to happen here at this stage, I think it's an option. I like Mike a lot.
Do you fire him? Yes or no, Ethan?
I think the new general manager should be given carte blanche to evaluate that.
Leave that to him.
Then he's fired.
Okay. Then if that's what happens, and I like Mike, and I've been a proponent of Mike, and I like the hiring of Mike, but I think we just got to acknowledge they've lost 9 out of 11 games. Like, what are we doing here?
So I also think it needs to be acknowledged here. Just because you're firing Chris Greer and you're firing and potentially firing Mike McDaniel,
he's fired. No GM is going to want him. You know why? Because he's too weird. He's too different. They want a guy that they can say is. They want to.
I categorically disagree with that. Number one, I think that there's a chance that somebody wants to give him a 1-year trial, what have you. There's a chance that happens. It happens in the NFL semi-regularly. It's not out of the ordinary completely. But I think what you're kind of missing here in all this is, even in a world where the core is good, let's say you like Tua, let's say you like Tyreek Hill, let's say you like Jalen Ramsey, a new GM might not want to touch that. A new GM might say, okay, well, you know what? We're going to get a really good pick this year, trade down, get more picks, fix the existing holes on the roster. It doesn't necessarily mean you're headed for a prolonged rebuild necessarily. That's the whole beauty of giving them time to evaluate this roster in its entirety, because like you, I agree. I don't think everything on this roster is shot.
It's not.
But yeah.
No, there are good players on this team, and there are good players like Jalen Phillips who've been, to that degree have been cursed, but also there's a lot of players. Jalen Phillips came in with an injury history. So, like, everything that you look at here, you can say, okay, there were warning signs, red flags for a lot of what has occurred. I just go back to this. And Luz, I'll pivot it back to you. I understand what you're saying, but, like, I go back to this. We're not that smart, okay? We're really not, okay? I don't even cover this team full-time anymore. But literally, before the season, okay, Alistano and I did 4 shows on they're going to be sunk by not having a backup quarterback. We only go twice a week, okay? Like, this was not something that was, oh, come on, don't be Pete Lewis like that. That's ridiculous. Anyway,
they've already known that I'm the Skip Bayless of this network, Ethan. They don't like me. They never will.
No, but I appreciate your perspective, but I'm just saying, like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, it was obvious they had these issues on the roster, and the number one issue was you cannot go into the season with Skylar Thompson as your number 2 quarterback, and the season was over when Tua got hurt the first time. It was over, and you ask him to come back in. And Lewis, I know you're a historian on this kind of stuff. You look at 2002, and I've mentioned this over and over. Fiedler came back. He came back after 2-4, and he actually won a couple of games, but then the margin for error was so small. They lost to Minnesota. They lost to New England. And it wasn't – this season was over when they didn't get – and I don't know, again, if it's because they didn't want to put pressure on Tua, but if you're giving somebody $50 million a year or whatever the hell it was, okay, you're anointing him as the quarterback. You don't need to coddle him by not having a competent backup. And to me, that's such wrong thinking.
I agree with that perspective. I agree with that perspective. Absolutely, you should have like hell. You should even have a competition with Tua. If Tua wants to earn the job, he needs to earn it. That's perfectly fine with me. I've never ever had an issue with that. And I want to push back on one thing you said, Ethan. I would like to think we are pretty smart because we can observe, we can see things, we can look at things. We've been the ones screaming about the offensive line for the past several years, and it seems like the Dolphins never seem to catch up on that. So we can say that we know what we're looking at. We're not complete losers who just watch on the eating chips and just.
No, but I'm not saying that.
But
Lewis, you're kind of making the point there because what you're saying is that we've been saying forever that the offensive line is an issue, and I don't think the offensive line played that poorly overall today.
No, not today. Not today.
I'll wait for Eric Smith to kind of roll in. He was at the game in Buffalo, and he was watching up close. And
they were not
the film.
Ethan, they weren't bad today. And I wasn't making the point to say, oh, the offensive line was to blame for today. I'm talking about our ability to actually watch and observe these games and actually make some perspectives on it that have some kind of level of just competence. We're looking at this from the perspective of, yes, the results speak for themselves. Miami currently is 2-6. Technically speaking, we have the easiest ease of schedule for the rest of the season. We could win out. I'm not saying we will. I'm not saying we will. They've
lost 9 of their last 11.
And every week is a new week. The fact that we were even
the first 8 games of the season.
The fact that we were even in a position to win this game proves that they can do it. They can do it. And it's not the rest of the games are not in Buffalo. Okay, let's just.
But there also was a Tennessee, and there was
okay. The next game is the Rams, the Raiders, the Patriots, the Packers, the Jets, the Texans. Like it's not like I'm expecting them to win out, but it's not impossible either.
The only good thing is they don't have a conspiracy theorist at quarterback. That's the only thing that makes this season better than the Jets. Look, the thing about all of this is. I come back to this, okay? We always talk about when it's about a coach, a quarterback, or a general manager. It's like, is there somebody out there who could do the job better, right? That's what you're talking about. Like, you want continuity, but you don't want to keep going down. Like, the Heat have continuity, but it's responsible continuity, okay? You don't want continuity where you're not accomplishing anything. And I look at this and I say, okay, quarterback position. Can you go get somebody better? Well, they just paid this guy. Okay, now would Cam Ward be better? Potentially, he could be. He's got more tools than Tua, at least physically. Okay, but I don't know necessarily that's going to be the case right away, or it's going to be in 2 years or 3 years. I don't know. Okay, we don't know until we see these guys under the fire. I mean, look, Anthony Richardson just got benched. These guys get benched all the time. There's a lot of quarterbacks over the last 3 years get benched. Tua is one of the few quarterbacks from that era, Burrow being another, Herbert being another, who has actually continued to remain a starting quarterback. So we don't know what's going to happen. Then I look at the coach situation and say, could somebody else do better? Well, potentially, I think Mike has some really good attributes. I also think he started to adjust. As Eric, you guys mentioned, today he was better about that kind of stuff. Maybe he'll learn. Clearly, there's discipline issues with this team that he does not address, okay, consistently. They make a mistake or two every week that kills them. Okay, that is problematic. That's on the coach. But I come back to this. I know somebody could do a better job than Chris Greer. Because we've seen them in the organization for the past, and they have not won a damn playoff game. Do you know how hard this is to not win a playoff game for 24 years? Now, he wasn't there for all of them, but he's had a role in like at least half of them. And it's not. And Ross
we're
is
talking about the years when he was a scout. I mean, at that point,
okay, well, let's not go back to scout. Let's not go back to scout. Okay, I don't mean he's a bad guy. I don't mean that he's bad at evaluating every position. I just think it's time for a change. I just think they need somebody else to look at this thing. Ross gave him, for everybody who criticizes Steve, and I've had my criticisms, but for everybody, he gave him a blank check and told him, go do your rebuild. And they're 2-6. They've lost 9 of 11. Greer needs to be fired. McDaniel, let the next guy evaluate him. Let the next guy evaluate Tua. But Greer, give the fans something right now, because this is intolerable. Like, you can't have this team is 2-6. I did say they'd be 11-6. I did. I was wrong. Tua got hurt. Okay, and again, I'm responsible for my own prediction because there was a chance.
Let's be clear about something, by the way, as well. There are not a lot of teams out there that can survive having their starting quarterback go on IR. There are not a lot of teams out there whose seasons can survive their quarterback going on IR.
Minnesota's done okay.
But Minnesota didn't have a top echelon quarterback to begin with. They were relying on J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold And they've been able to do well in spite of the fact, like Darnold is not suddenly some super quarterback. Okay. I refuse to believe he's having some kind of career renaissance out of nowhere. Like if you want to call that the Kevin O'Connell effect, fine. But Sam Darnold is not like some top 5 quarterback who's leading the Vikings to victory every week. People
have been Sam Darnold truthers for 2 or 3 years now, though. Like, it's not like that just came out of nowhere. There's always been kind of those voices saying, hey,
bro, and you know what? Nick Foles had a season. And Case Keenum had a season. Like these guys, Ryan Fitzpatrick had a couple of seasons. Like these guys will come out of nowhere and they'll have something, and they'll be able to say, "I'll be able to make a good backup career out of this because they'll remember this."
I'm sorry to turn this into a Sam Darnold thing, but number one, I don't think it's out of the realm of. I'm sorry. This has become a Sam Darnold show. No, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to at least assume he's Geno Smith at this point, right? Like, okay. But regardless, all of that being said, we've all seen it happen in a sport where a team hits a ceiling with whether it's a certain executive or a certain head coach. I'm not saying that this is the 04-05 Heat and they need to fire Mike McDaniel and bring in a new head coach and they'll win the championship the next season. But sometimes it happens to where the roster is good and there are things that are correctable and you need to fix those things, but you can't hire the same guy to fix the same problems when the same problems have been the same problems for 5-6 years.
I mean, the guy who burns down the house, you don't then give him a set of tools to rebuild it. I just think we're past the stage. I think I can't think of another executive in South Florida history who's gotten this kind of leeway. Like, I was thinking about it, like, across the teams, like with the Marlins, like that's been an ownership issue primarily. With the Panthers, they've cleared people out. I mean, the Heat, again, there hasn't been a valley of longer than 2 years in the past 30. So I can't think of an executive. I don't think any Dolphin executive has been given this much time. I mean, Ireland had what? Like, he came in 2008 with Parcells and Sperano. He stayed a little bit longer, and then he was blown out. Most of their GMs, whether it was Mueller, whether it was, Saban left on his own, but and he had Mueller and Spielman as GMs. Spielman didn't get this much time. None of these guys, Tannenbaum thankfully didn't get this much time. But I'm just saying, they've given him a chance to do this. Go find another voice. I don't care if it's Louis Riddick or any of these other names or some executive who comes from Pittsburgh or one of the better organizations.
It's going to be somebody in the building, somebody like a Marvin Allen, who's still here, by the way.
He's still
here. He's been in
the
background.
What does he do, Lewis? I'm not sure because he's so highly regarded.
But I don't know
what he does.
You watch him be the GM if Grier gets fired. I guarantee you he will be. Marvin Allen has not been sticking around in the background this entire time just for him to get given the boot after his buddy Chris Grier gets fired. There's no way he's going to be able to go in there and say, "Let me make a case for exactly why I should be the GM." He's already setting it up.
I know, I get it. That I understand he's a qualified guy or came to the organization with that reputation coming from Kansas City, but I'm just saying, I don't think only sell that.
Okay, let me tell you something. If the only thing the fans can take is a celebrity pick, then you're.
I'm not saying no. I'm not saying a celebrity pick. It does not have to be a celebrity pick. It needs to be somebody different at this point. I'm not the guy who's changed for change's sake, but again, they gave him the keys in 2020 and said 2019 to 2020 and said, do whatever it is you have to do. You're going to have all these resources. We're going to spend all the money. You're going to have all the draft picks. The Tunsil trade was a smart trade, as it turned out, even though Laramie continued to be a good player. That they did all those things. And we are where we are. Even in the past 2 years, they didn't win a playoff game. So, yes, this season has been a catastrophe in every particular way. But I think, Lewis, you know how it is down here. You live down here, okay? You know what that stadium is going to look like in the last 3 or 4 home games, right? It's going to be overrun with visiting fans. It's going to be half empty at kickoff. This is what happens here, okay? The Canes are winning. There's a lot of buzz about them, obviously. That's going to carry into January. There's a certain segment of people down here who are, the Panthers deserve their support. It's the best team in town right now. And obviously there's a Heat audience, and I don't know how that season's going to go. I think that's going to be all over the place. But, the Dolphins audience, the stadium, it was going to feel heavy there. And I think Ross is going to make a change. He's 81, right? What is he now? Like he's going to make a change.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, and for the people that are saying, whatever, oh, you don't even have any names, you don't have anybody. Here's what I want to stress about this. This is arguably, you can make a case. Granted, it depends on how the individual general manager feels about Tua, but you could make a case that you have an owner that's very willing to invest.
Yeah.
You have a competent core of players. You have an owner that's very interested in stability in the front office. This is an attractive job. This is not a nobody's going to want to come be the GM for the Miami Dolphins situation. This will be attractive. It's always been attractive. It was attractive. It was they've always had plenty for the general manager job. It's always been attractive. It's just that Ross is loyal to Greer. He looks at him like a son, and I understand. I understand that relationship, and I understand that he tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. But this build is over. Is over. No. It's what we talk about on the Heat side. The build is over. Now it's an opportunity for a pivot. The difference is on the Heat side, I trust them to pivot. I trust them to make the right decisions. The Dolphins side is not.
Maybe my math is off. How long has the Butler Adebayo core been around now?
6 years, but they made two finals. They made 2 finals and 3 Eastern Conference finals. In the first 5. I understand why it dragged out into 6. And look, I think they need to make a move. So I'm with most of the Heat fans on this. But
you're talking about the build being over.
This team hasn't won a playoff game.
McDaniel's this is his 3rd year. McDaniel and this build has been here for 3 years. We're lumping in the Flores years with the rebuild, as it were.
No, you're not.
We can't do that. Like the whole point of the Flores years was to dump everything. Those don't count as the build. This is year 3 of the build.
It's not the third. I mean, it's not the Greer build. It's his 2nd coach in this build. So
yeah, you're talking about when we're talking about the build, it's the Chris Greer rebuild. This isn't the Mike McDaniel rebuild. That's not necessarily what this is about. This is more about Greer than it is about McDaniel, for one. The second thing to keep in mind here is in the last 3 seasons, you've had one season where you can argue year 1 with McDaniel, you marginally overperform despite the Tua injury to get to the playoffs and lose to Buffalo close. And then you underperform year 2. You underperform to expectations last year. And then this year you drastically underperform. There's just very few, and I understand that there are mitigating circumstances there. There's just very few executives that in a position that the Dolphins are in that have the assets invested into their rosters that the Dolphins have that survive that kind of thing.
Right. There needs to be a sacrifice, those, don't you think?
If you want to fire Chris Greer, fine. I don't have any issues with him. I have no loyalty with him. I have no desire to necessarily see him stay. But what my concern is that this is what it represents. What it represents is not just a change, because at that point, if all you want is change, then go ahead and just every time we don't win the Super Bowl, we should just fire everybody and start over. Because right now we're in a position where, unfortunately, yes, it looks like this season was cursed. Tua going down, you had all these extenuating circumstances, Jalen Phillips going through his issue, Bradley Chubb still isn't back, but we've set up so much that, all you have to do, if you really look at next year, if you want to look at next year and beyond, to get rid of because there are people saying we need to trade Tyreek, we need to go and do all of those things, get rid of all the important players that are on this team and just decide, you know what, we're going to set things up for the new GM to start over. I don't want to start over for another 3 or 4 years. Not when I see that there is potential in what I'm looking at here. I just watched Tua go down in the last minutes, tie the game, and if the defense could have made literally just one stop, We very easily could have won this game. I don't want to throw that away, especially not after the past 2 seasons where Miami.
But you don't have to throw Tua. But Lewis, you don't have to necessarily throw Tua away, and you don't necessarily have to rule on McDaniel right now. You just need somebody else to come in, evaluate the roster, evaluate the coach, evaluate the quarterback. Look, I've been against the half-ass measures before. I have been, so I'm kind of going against my own philosophy. But I think where they're at right now,
in this world, Ethan, people have egos. They don't want to have the leftovers of the other guy. They want to come in here. They want to set their stamp. This is my guy, my quarterback, my everything. And the problem is
I prefer that than another year of Chris Greer whiffing on offensive linemen and backup quarterbacks. Honestly,
I see something that can work here. I see an offense that moves. I see an offense that when Tua is in charge, very few teams. I don't want to hear about how top defense is. Buffalo was supposed to be a really good defense, and we were able to score points on them. It's all a matter of learning and growing and developing. And guess what? McDaniel made his adjustment. They run the ball more. That opened things up for Tua. They don't need the deep ball anymore. Like, when was the last time they really hit huge on a massive deep ball to Tyreek or Waddle like they did last season? Because that was all the offense was predicated on. They've been scoring. They've been doing their thing with Tua. They've been running the football. It works. The offense works. And for me to just go ahead and throw that away, I have an issue with that because I don't want to go back to the uncertainty of what could potentially be, because this guy might have an idea of how an offense should work, or this guy might have an idea of how he wants to do it.
Look, I understand what you're saying about McDaniel, and I know that a new guy can come in and say he wants somebody else. I get it. How many years are we giving Chris Greer? Like, how many more rebuilds? How many more builds does he get? I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is the end game here? I don't think there's any other executive in sports who can fail to win a playoff game for year after year after year after year. And now they're not making the playoffs. Like, this looks to me like, would you not be demoralized if you're them at this point? They lost to Arizona on basically the last.
Of course, I was demoralized. I literally didn't involve last week because I was out with flu symptoms. It was miserable to watch.
Yes.
So it
gave you the flu. Anyway, we got a lot of comments coming in here. I know there's a lot of people who want to get in. Let's just get to this, and then again we'll have more shows coming up this week. Pulse of Fins Nation, Inside Leverage Show, 3 yards per carry, of course, All Dolphins Show, and all that. But I just want to kind of close with this as we kind of look ahead. What exactly? I mean, Lewis, you're saying I'll go to Eric on it, but Lewis is basically saying, well, they could win out. I'm
not saying they will. I said they could.
I didn't say you said they will. I said you said they could. Okay, that's what I said. I'm just trying to figure out what the point of all this is at this stage. I mean, I'm looking at the AFC. It's not as good as it was. The division's gone. I don't know. Like, should they be trying to pivot to get work for more and more of their young players? They've got some guys who aren't playing that much. Should they turn it over to Jalen Wright in the backfield? Mostert's not. I expected a big decline from. Like, what should they? Where should they be going with? I mean, is there any point in playing OBJ? He's not going to be with the team next year. I mean, he had a 6-yard catch today. Like, Eric, where should they be headed with this now in the next few games?
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to give the best compliment you can give Mike McDaniel right now is that the team has not quit. That's clear. And so I don't think that they're likely to just lay down over the remainder of the season. They'll probably win a handful of games more, 6, 7, 8 wins on the season, what have you. I would explore trades for Raheem Mostert. You don't think Dallas with their backfield would love to have Raheem Mostert right now? I would explore Calais Campbell. I would explore anybody that's not necessarily lock, shock, and barrel on the team next year, whether it's for injury or for age. You know, Odell, if anybody even wants him, I would start looking into Malik Washington. What do you have there?
Right.
You do go ahead and you kind of pivot to some of the younger players. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to lose out. I think that they'll probably win. They'll probably go 500 or better the rest of the way. The problem is that just doesn't mean anything at this point in the context of making the postseason. So I would absolutely pivot off of some of the older players, get what you can, and then, see what awaits you in the off season. If there is a new GM, if there is a new coach, whatever decision Stephen Ross decides to go in.
Lewis, would you sell now? Like, can
Sell assets?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying sell Tyreek off or anything like that.
I mean, that's literally what CK is advocating for right now in the OnlyFans. He's saying they trade Tyreek, like specifically Tyreek, because
I don't know if I agree with CK there. But.
He's the only one. Because let's look at it from the mindset of what can be had. Right. Nobody wants to trade for Raheem Mostert. The only ones who would be tradable are your wide receivers. Tyreek is tradable to the Chiefs. I'm sure the Chiefs would love to have him back and win another Super Bowl. You can trade somebody. You can trade Waddle to somebody. You can trade Achane. You can trade all of our young talent. The only ones who are tradable are the ones you want to keep around. That's the reality of it. The reason you want to keep them around are because they're good enough to justify it. Like, who else are you going to trade? Calais Campbell to develop who? Who is the guy that Campbell is acting as a stopgap for? There's no one there.
Eric, what?
Lewis. You know, a 6-rounder is going to be on the roster next season, potentially.
A 6-round.
Campbell, under no circumstances in the history, there is no possible future where Calais Campbell is a Miami Dolphin in 2025. At least get the potential
of a potential, like a 6-rounder. So
okay.
I mean, Lewis, if it helps you, but I'll say this: if it helps you move up, like if a 6-rounder is what you need to move up a few picks to get the player you want in the draft, my whole point is Chris Greer shouldn't be taking that player. Like that's my big thing. Like we should see this is the problem, and this is why I would fire Greer tomorrow. Okay, because you can't be having him make decisions about the future of the franchise when at this point I don't really think, and I think most people don't think he should be directing the franchise going forward. And Eric, you made that point like 3 weeks ago, and I'm with you on it. And I understand that they've had some bad luck and the last couple games in particular, and the injuries. Although I blame the organization for some of the injuries because some of these guys were guys who were injury prone before they came in, but. The point is, like, you're just going to you just keep recycling the same thing. So I'm in favor of selling off some players, but who should be doing that? And if I'm Ross, I'm saying right now, like, everything has to go through my desk, like everything. Okay. And we know he's not a football guy, so it's not ideal, but I just don't think certainly you can't add, right? We're not trading draft picks for players right now. No, right? Like you're 2-6. You're not going to do that.
Listen, Greer might if he's looking to save his job. I don't agree with the decision.
And that's the problem. That's the problem, right?
I'm not saying he should. I don't have an issue with firing Greer. What I have an issue with is throwing away a bill that still has meat on the bone. That's what my issue is.
I just wonder how they're going to.
This is not 38-year-old Jimmy Butler like still hanging on to whatever greatness he has.
No, he's 35. But I get your point.
Either way, the point, like he's old. Like in the Dolphins, a lot of their players are in their prime in this offense.
But I'm not saying you have to throw them all out. Like I'm not even in favor of throwing 2 out. Like I'm just saying, like to me, I just look at it and I'm like, this isn't about the specific. You're right. Football builds. A build could be a year. It could be an off season in the NFL. Like you can flip this thing quickly. I'm just asking, could they bring in somebody else to flip it? Because I don't think I just don't think this guy has shown. This is a franchise that used to win Super Bowls way back or go to Super Bowls or deep playoff runs. And like, we're talking about 24 years. Try something different. I'm not saying he's responsible for all 24 or even half of them. I'm just saying it's if I'm like, and I'm an observer on this, if I'm a Dolphin fan right now, I'm like, what is the purpose of going to the stadium the rest of the year? What is it? What am I looking forward to? We're going to be healthy next year. I don't want to hear that. I think they need somebody else to take a look at what they have and design a team that's better suited for the modern NFL. And I think that, to me, that's bringing somebody in. If Greer goes and somebody else says no to McDaniel, I don't like it because I like Mike, and I like what he offers. But if that's
Ethan,
the case,
what are you talking about? Suited for the modern NFL?
You've talked about it. I don't think the team's physical enough.
Okay, yeah, physicality, fine. But if we're talking about physicality, that needs to be the trenches, and that needs to be on defense. Like the offense as a whole works. If you want to add an extra wrinkle here and there, where you have like one big guy who can go and shove some people around, like a bigger tight wide receiver, That's I'm good with that. But that again, I'm not throwing all this offense away. We've had for the past 2 seasons, regardless of whether they faded in the year at the end of the year or not. Numerically speaking, statistically speaking, top 3 offense in the NFL 2 years running with Mike McDaniel. This year, things have not gone the way that we want them to, but there's still a lot of season left and you can call it useless padding if you want to. That's fine. But this build, if you want to call it a build, I feel like, let's put it this way. If Miami picks a smart GM, I'm not talking about egotistical, I'm not talking about arrogant, because a lot of people these days seem to have that same trait. It's like, I'm going to be the guy who's going to save the franchise and everybody else get the hell out of my way. Like, if Miami picks a smart GM, they will see what Miami has here and say, you know what? I'm just going to add some bits and pieces here and there, trim some of the fat off the edges here, and we can actually keep going with what is already functioning here. But I don't know. I don't have that kind of faith that GM exists, truthfully. I firmly believe that any executive who gets the GM job is going to go balls to the walls insane and say, I'm going to build this my way, and everybody else is just fodder for me to throw at them.
Your concern is them firing McDaniel.
My concern is them firing McDaniel and getting rid of an offense that works. Yes.
But here's the thing. We're talking about the known versus the unknown. And I understand that the unknown is unknown for a reason and that there's a certain risk in doing so. But what we know is, and you've hit on this a million times, Lewis, that quote that Chris Greer had in the offseason, we're more worried about the offensive line than you are.
I agree. Yes, that is a fireable offense.
Right.
Okay. So you have a general manager who can't or won't fix the Achilles heel of this roster.
Right. That's
if there was one Achilles heel, that's what it is, right?
That's his Achilles heel. Today, the defense was the problem.
I get that, but then why not flip that coin on the chance that you do get that GM that you're talking about? Because there's I don't think it's as much of a given that somebody comes in and says, I want to blow all this up as you're portraying it. I just don't think that's as much of a given.
I'm talking human nature, Eric. And there's nobody who let's say that tomorrow, like I'll take this to real life. Let's say that tomorrow you become the rental manager for your own Penske branch. Are you not going to do things your way rather than just taking in the ways of the guy that taught you first? Like, you may take some bits and pieces here and there, but you're going to do things the way you want it.
Not particularly. I think it's always smart to come in and observe the way things are first, and then you make a decision from there. Like, this whole idea that a new GM is going to come in and just start taking a hatchet to this roster is, I think, unfounded. You look at. I think I read a stat that says 60% of the time when new GMs come in, they bring in a new quarterback. The Dolphins just paid Tua. Like, let's be real about this. Tua is the quarterback in 2025. Whether Mike McDaniel is here, whether Chris Greer is here, regardless, because of the cap ramifications of potentially getting rid of him. Okay, well, then you say to yourself, okay, well, if I'm keeping Tua, then it makes sense to keep Mike McDaniel, right? Okay, well, right. In that case, I think a new GM would come in and I think the most likely thing is, I'm going to give Tua and McDaniel an opportunity. I'm going to try to maximize this around them. Because regardless of what human nature says, Lewis, a job of the GM is to win by any means necessary. And first and foremost, you want to win. And if you think that winning means just kind of patching in some of the holes in the roster, then that's what it'll be. I don't think it has to involve taking a hatchet to this thing.
All right, I'm gonna exit here.
We're done.
You guys can go off for another 2 hours, but I appreciate.
We're done.
We need disagreement on this stuff.
I'm legit. We're done. It's almost been an hour.
It's almost been an hour. Just this is my hope. Okay, don't let Greer trade draft picks to try to win out. I'm hearing Tyreek Hill talking about winning out and Tua talking about winning out. They ain't winning out. Win a damn game. Okay, I know that things are broken against them, but it's just you cannot be 2-6. I'm sorry, and be adding players, trading draft picks. No, just Ross needs to just say no. Selling is another story. If the right offer comes along for someone, you can accumulate some picks. It'll help you move up in the next draft or whatever. I'm okay with that. I wouldn't trade Tyreek, but I'm going to hear CK out on this to see where it's at. But I just think, again, it's just time for new direction at the top. And I think the guy might like McDaniel. Who knows? That's where I'm at with it. But we'll see. Anyway, Pulse of Vince Nation, Tuesday night.
Tomorrow. We're doing it tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Monday.
Yes,
so
we're
jump
doing
right
it tomorrow
on that.
because Eric, Tuesday is obviously a very big day. So.
Yes, so yeah, no, you're right.
We're not trying to compete with that.
No, you know what? I should
understand.
actually put a mandate on that nobody should do anything on Tuesday. Okay, I appreciate you mentioning that. All right, everybody have a good day. CK does get emotional. Well, CK actually is not that emotional about these kind of things. It'll just be, unless it's an emotional 7,000 word thread. Anyway, Eric, Lewis, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody in the comments, even the Bills fans. 2-6. Have a good one.